who you are or what you do.
The best description is one of the nicknames that was given to me, the dream architect. I care about dreams, not only mine, but my fellow human and the fellow community. I've built skills in my career that architect those dreams. I don't sit in one particular lane.
Business gurus say things, you gotta stick to one thing and then let that carry on over to the next thing.
Being in a particular lane, oftentimes you're still connected to other lanes.
You have a company that you founded called the BeePrint.
BeePrint is my first baby. It was birthed by accident almost. They were marketing the first tech summit that would take place there. And I saw that Google would be there, Facebook, Uber, Lyft, all these companies. They placed my exhibitor booth right next to Google Accelerate.
What type of workload someone can expect if they're in a 9-to-5 right now and they want to start something of their own?
We make time for what's important to us. People don't take inventory of their time well.
So Becca, thank you for coming on the show.
It's a pleasure.
Okay.
Absolutely gratitude for being here with you today.
Thank you. I appreciate that. For people who don't know who you are or what you do, how would you normally describe that?
So the best description, I think, is one of the nicknames that was given to me several years ago, which is the dream architect. And the reason I feel like that name just really embodies who I am is I care about dreams, not only mine, but my fellow human and the fellow community. And I've built skills in my career that have allowed me to know how to architect those dreams. And so that's what I've become passionate about. I think that's the best way to describe me, being that I don't sit in one particular lane or industry.
Hmm. Speaking of that, like sitting in one particular lane or industry, a lot of like business gurus, they'll say things like, you gotta stick to one thing and then allow that to work first and then let that carry on over to the next thing. What would be your thoughts on that?
I would say you have to see the connectivity between it all. Oftentimes, even if you stay in one lane, you're probably still connected to other lanes as well, right? So, for example, in the tech space, I build software, but I build software for multiple different industries. So I may be building software for the education space, which means now I need to become an expert at education and understand framework and program development and curriculum development. But I also may be building an app for fitness, right? So that means I need to understand rounds and how a fitness trainer might be thinking about how to guide their the people that they're trading or their followers. And so being in a particular lane, oftentimes you're still connected to other lanes. It's almost inevitable. So for me, I've always tried to find how these things are connected and what the greater vision is between the things. And so starting with software allowed me to open myself to almost any other industry. Now that we're in a technological world, I don't know if there are any industries that are really operating without technology, right? We see it in spirituality, we see it in the church, we see it in education, we see it in even holistic and wellness spaces, which is an area I'm very passionate about. So for me, I don't isolate or silo myself in any place. I try to move from a very intrinsic space. And that intrinsic space allows me to just be connected to everything that feels right to my spirit.
Okay. Okay. And speaking of tech, you have a company that you founded called the BeePrint.
Correct.
Can you explain a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So BeePrint is my first baby. It was birthed by accident almost. I was traveling, so I'm Haitian. That's my background. My family's from Haiti. I'm a first generation American. And I was called to visit my home country when I was 29. I don't know if it was because 30 was around the corner or what it was, but something in my spirit said, go home. My family had never taken me home. They had a lot of trauma connected to the country. And if you know anything about Haiti, you have a lot of mixed stories around Haiti, right? Just the resilience, the trauma, the history of the culture, and the things that we've been through. But the one thing that I knew is that it was the first Black Republic. And so there was an interest for me that said, I don't have fear. I have interest and curiosity, and I want to lean into that. And so I visited my home country. There was no coincidence that while I was there, they were marketing the first tech summit that would take place there. And I was like, there's no way that this is actually happening. And I saw that Google would be there, Facebook, Uber, Lyft, all these companies. So I told myself, you know what, I'm learning a little bit in tech. I'm learning how to build software, build websites. Let me just set up a company and be an exhibitor at this tech summit. The tech summit was 6 weeks away. And so I put together a company. I called it, the first company actually I put together was called Be Abstract. And that was, again, to capture some of my creativity and not really sticking to one particular niche or lane. And so that was how BeePrint was born. I went to Haiti, set up the vendor booth. By surprise, they placed my exhibitor booth right next to Google Accelerate. So visitors that were just passing by thought I was a big deal, and I didn't have a single customer yet. But I did have a vision. I knew I was there for a greater purpose. And so I met people from all over the world, literally people from Europe, people from Africa. I mean, anyone, name it, they were there. And I had an opportunity to meet this gentleman named Ted, and he was the founder of a company called New Code, which means we code in Haitian Creole. And he set up a nonprofit to help students at the University of Quisqueya, which is one of the largest universities in Haiti, to teach them how to program and code because a lot of them were mechanical engineering students or electrical engineering, which those skills are very transferable to tech.
Right.
And he knew there was probably more opportunity for them globally if they had software skills. And so when I met him and I asked him what he was up to, he was like, "Yeah, I've got these amazing students, and we got a small contract with Kellogg's right now." I said, "That's amazing. That's so cool." He said, "Yeah, but they're only making about $2, $3 an hour." And I was shocked. I was at $2, $3 an hour. And I already knew in tech, like, coming out of college, you could make six figures. And so I was like, they're robbing these students. So I made it my personal mission. I said, "You know what, Ted, we'll be in touch." I got his information, went back to the US, and I went on a mission to find a company that was willing to outsource to Haiti. I was like, if they outsource to India, they outsource to Vietnam, they outsource to Costa Rica, why can't Haiti also have an opportunity as well?
Right.
And I tell you, Drews, I got calls after calls after calls, so many no's. Like people just, the insults were either, do they speak English? Do they have internet? Like it was very, it was a struggle. It was a struggle. I can't say that my ego wasn't bruised because again, this is my culture. Um, but something in me said, you know what, don't give up. You're going to get to that yes. And eventually it was just a past client that I worked with, called them up. "Hey, I know you guys have been working with, engineers overseas. I have this small team in Haiti. Are you willing to give me a shot? We're even willing to work a week just to give you a trial run." And that was kind of how I started to position us. I said, well, let me just prove what we have versus saying, hey, sign a contract with me, take a chance.
Right. Right.
Once we got that first yes, I've been able to carry that team with me. So that first yes came in 2018. So today is 2026. So 8 years I've been able to carry that team, not only with me, some of them have outgrown me to the point where I can't afford them. And when I tell you that gives me chills, right? Like some of these guys they've been able to move to the US, they've been able to set up their own companies. Um, and that's the whole point of the work. It's that, right? It's building something greater than yourself. And my mission there was to start something that could be bigger than me. And that's what I did with BeePrint.
I like that. I especially like how you talk about because you did mention that you went a whole year before you got your first contract, right? And so you're calling a bunch of people and you're just getting no, 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 no. Did you ever feel discouraged? Like, how are you able to like push past that?
Absolutely. There were some days I said, well, man, maybe I'm just a dreamer, right? Maybe this is imposter syndrome. Maybe this isn't supposed to come to fruition. And what kept me going was they really needed. I knew that they had the skills. They needed better opportunities. They deserved better opportunities. And I knew that once I got that first yes and we would prove what they could do, we would continue to be able to roll with it.
So you're saying that like the drive to like succeed and to carry on through the nose is stemming from something like purpose. You felt like a purpose and a calling. That's what's able to like push.
Absolutely, it was a call. It wasn't even a choice. Again, I didn't know about that tech summit, right? It was one of those things where in the right place at the right time and discovered that that would even be an opportunity. And I also took a chance knowing that I didn't have a formal company set up. I had no experience yet. But what I did have was a vision for something greater than myself. And I think that's what I leaned into more than anything was that.
Okay, so I want before you went to Haiti, I want to like go back to kind of like your upbringing. What was the environment like growing up, and how did you pick up on these like artistic uh, skills and like having vision? Where does that come from?
I love that question. So it actually comes from a place of, it starts with grief, actually. So I lost my grandmother pretty young. I was 5 years old when she got sick with a brain injury and she was in a coma for about 10 years. That's the first place I think I really became the dream architect because in order to move through that grief, I had to dream. I dreamed about her. I dreamed about still being with her. I imagined a world where she was still her normal self, still holding my hand, walking me down the block to go to school. And so at 5 years old, I learned to really lean into imagination. Imagination is what was my saving grace. It's carried me through traumas that came with, upbringing, with some of the hardships. And it also allowed me to imagine the future even while living in the reality, which I think is very hard for a lot of people to do, right? A lot of times you can only imagine what you're able to see, but I was actually able to visualize things that were just in my mind and naturally connect to them in a way where I felt like this actually may come to light one day. I don't know when, I don't know how. I really believed in those visions. And so around 5, 6 years old, I started kind of capturing some of those visions, little short stories, things like that. And I started playing instruments. And so that was really where I leaned into becoming a creative. I learned how to play the piano at a pretty young age, to the point where I took lessons for a year. And then my teacher told my parents, hey, there's nothing else I could teach her. She plays by ear. She pretty much play anything I put in front of her. And so I took that talent and started composing. And that was what also allowed me to stay connected to my grandmother. I composed songs that reminded me of her. So again, here I am staying in a place of creation, but also staying in a place of imagination, like believing that she could hear the songs, believing that they were reaching her and reaching her heart. That I believe is where the passion for creativity really came, was really being able to escape reality, grief, sadness, and create something from that, create something that hopefully will outlive me, right? And telling stories that really matter. And so storytelling, creativity, music composition, that was all kind of very early in my life. But I also had an advantage with both of my parents had very much entrepreneurial spirits. My mom was in psych, so she's a psych professional, had her own private practice. And then my father's a software developer.
Yeah.
So I'm the oldest of three. He always thought my brother, who's the youngest, would be the developer. He never imagined it would be me because I had my own. I was like, no, I'm gonna be a businesswoman. I'm gonna go be a CEO of some Fortune 100 company. That's just what I thought I would do. That's why I studied business and got an MBA. But it's so funny how when I moved to Austin, I stumbled in tech and then had to learn how to build software. My dad and I became like now he works with me. I'm actually my dad's boss today, which is wow. We'll get to that later. But literally, we get to like create applications and software today, and so I'm grateful that I did grow up seeing my parents pursue their passions as well, even after coming to this country and having to learn new languages. English was a second and third language for them. They grew up speaking French and Creole, and so I think seeing that resilience also allowed me to be fearless to some degree, right? Like, what do I have to lose? Let me just try it out and learn from it versus having this fear that I would lose or fail.
And so I'm also like first generation from Cameroon. So I kind of understand what it's like to have immigrant parents and the standard that they put on you. Did you feel that growing up?
Oh yeah. The standard was absolutely put there. So the stride for excellence was absolutely always put there. I will say I'm grateful for my dad had a unique softness in the sense that he didn't want to push too much of his own upbringing on us. So he did try to do something a little different in terms of, I'm not going to force you guys into anything. I will allow you all to explore. So he believed in the Maria Montessori curriculum, which children learn through discovery and play, right? And so from a young age, I had the opportunity to say, hey, I want to try this. I swam, I played basketball, I played volleyball, I played multiple instruments. There were very few things that I think my dad didn't encourage us to lean in on. Now, my mom's a little different, but I still appreciate the balance. I've also got that discipline from her where it's like, all right, you can venture off and explore and play, but at some point, where are you going to plant your feet and say, this is something I want to cultivate, right? And staying in the play box and in the sandbox doesn't allow you to really cultivate. You have to eventually go to the ground and plant something and water it and make sure it has sunlight and allow it to bloom over time. And so I think having the balance of both really helped me explore, but also explore with some guardrails and saying, all right, I'm not going to just stay a dreamer. I'm going to become an architect,
Right.
right? Where I don't just dream and visualize and stay in a fantasy world. I can take those dreams and blueprints and actually apply them into an implementation and have a tangible product or service or something that can be tested and proven to add value.
I really like how what you talk about dreams. And so a lot of times you'll hear people say, write down your goals. You're more likely to accomplish your goals if you write them down. Uh, And some people don't even do that, but you develop that at like such a young age to be able to visualize something, write it down, and then like actually like will it into existence. What can you say to somebody about having dream, having vision, and trying to execute that?
I would say hold on to your inner child. I really feel like that's part of the key because when you're in a state as a child and you're creating, you're not so tied to the outcome. You're not tied to people's opinions. You're not tied to what the world thinks of you. You are in that space creating, co-creating with God, right? And like just going with your feelings, going with your emotions, playing with your hands, allowing the things that you see in your mind to be what you build in person. And so for me, I think it's really staying tapped into your inner child as much as possible. Like that for me is what has allowed me to take risk and not get in my own way of like thinking about the end result or thinking about how people are going to perceive me or feel about me. Or even thinking about, I think one thing that I love about children, they don't really think about is this a win or a loss? Right? They're just in the moment, they're just in the experience. And I think that's beautiful. And I think if we as adults and humans could go back to when we were 5, 6, 7 years old and we didn't care so much about trying to be confident and trying to be, whatever they trying to be perfect, right? We could just be in the moment and just explore and play and build. And I think there's a lot of power in coming from that place.
Which is true because a lot of like successful people, they're not afraid to like just fall on their face in front of everybody. What do you think is stopping people from connecting with their inner child? Because it's not. I know you're saying connect with your inner child, but it's not. What kind of steps can you give somebody to allow themselves to be able to do that?
I would start with a hobby first. Something that's informal, something that's maybe personal to you, maybe something that's not exposed to everyone, just to get comfortable with. I'm doing something that's not tied to a 9 to 5 or a paycheck or for performance or for validation. Doing something for myself, feeding my own inner child, whatever that is. It could be coloring, it could be story writing, it could be picking up an instrument, it could be gardening, any of those things. But I think taking away the seriousness of life and really tapping into the early days of our humanity, which are the times when we weren't worried, we weren't afraid, we could just be and explore and play and learn from that. So I would start with the hobby, something personal to yourself, or even a group, right? Because sometimes people need accountability partners too. So like maybe finding other people that have that same interest. So you now have a dramatic play group that you can, hang out with, tap into your inner child with.
Okay. So I want to talk about how you stumbled into tech. So you went to you got a business degree,
I
right?
did. So I got an MBA in project management and international business. I ended up moving to Austin in 2007 for a relationship. It was one of my first relationships. And I happened to go to a job fair just in support. So I was just there to support a friend. Didn't happen to know that the hiring manager was in the lobby and we were just having a conversation. And next thing you knew, she was like, "Hey, I'd really love to hire you. I'm actually hiring. Are you interested?" Um, at the time, I was like, I'm going to school. I'm at U of H. How does that work?" But they offered tuition reimbursement. So I was like, well, let me look at, what it would either look like to transfer. And I was blessed because U of H had just offered virtual courses that same year. So I was able to maintain my coursework, but switch it to online curriculum. So I accepted the job, moved out there. The company was Starwood Hotel and Resort. So they were building out call centers to support the Starwood brand. So that's the Westin Hotels, W Hotels, et cetera. And they happened to have a new brand, which was the Aloft. I'm sure you guys have heard the Aloft Hotel. It's a spin of the W. And they asked me if I would be part of the team to kind of help spearhead that. Now, mind you, I think I was like 19, 20 years old. Like I just stumbled into this. I was like, sure, I'm really good at what I would say faking it until you make it, right? Like in terms of I may not know how to be an expert here, but I'm going to show up confident. I'm going to show up resilient and I'm going to leverage my resources so I can make it to the end, right? And so somehow being given some of those projects early on, I got to introduced to technology, got to be introduced to startup because even though Starwood was an established company. What they were building was a startup. And they were trying to come out with a different type of hotel that was more eco-friendly, that was more technology driven. So I got to be a part of all these like proof of concepts and research and discovery and things that I'd never experienced because the career that I had before that was working in, schools, working in. I worked at my dorm as one of the guidance counselors there, and so I didn't have any actual formal business experience to that point. Um, I relied on my faith. I relied on my resilience. I relied on my tenacity and my ability to, again, I'm going to figure some stuff out, right? Whether it's I have to go research. At the time, we didn't have ChatGPT, so we had to go to the library, pull out some books. But I was not shy to learning. I love to learn. And so I learned enough to be dangerous to grow through that role and then actually stumble on my first real tech job, which allowed me to learn about infrastructure. And so my real technology job was with a company called GCS Technologies. Um, they were co-founded by two brothers. They were Jewish brothers, brilliant, brilliant guys that were high school dropouts, but some of the smartest people I knew. And I learned from them. When I say they took me under their wing, they had me in boardrooms and tables that I didn't know how I even ended up with. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of it was my personality and just knowing that I could get it done. And so I learned about infrastructure. This was before cloud came about. So servers and storage area networks and just the old school way of how we used to store data and manage systems. And they put me over a project with Dell and said, hey, we want you to figure out how to build this partnership with Dell so that we can become a certified Dell partner. That's what their company aspired towards. So I was like, well, I guess I got to build relationships. And so my entry into technology wasn't so much learning how to be an engineer, it was learning how to show up as a person in space that was willing to build relationships with other people and find out what is your goal? What do I have access to so that I can help you meet your goal? So again, still being the dream architect, right? So I camped out at Dell a couple of times a week to the point where finally I harassed these people so much to the point where we built a healthy relationship. But they gave me a desk. So mind you, I'm not even a Dell employee. They gave me a desk there. They gave me a badge. I had access to go to that Dell campus in Round Rock, Texas. And I cultivated relationships. I brought them tips treats and breakfast and just got to know them, got to know who their kids were, who was married. And I realized the power in relationship building, right? Because once you build a relationship, they were willing to give me all of their goals and metrics and milestones. Like, hey, I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to, the goals that I have this quarter. Can you help me meet them? And so naturally, I became a solution consultant for them, which in turn allowed me to help grow GCS Technologies and their whole goal, which was to become a Dell certified partner. So I became a Dell certified partner. We grew from there. And then it was time for me to really dabble into, all right, so I've done the relationship side, I've done the business side, I've done the sales side. Now I need to learn actually how to architect, right? Like I'm selling technology, but I'll be honest, that in those days between 2014 and 2018, I don't know how much I understood about the technology I was selling. Right. I knew some buzzwords. I knew how to, finesse my way around a contract and, talk about the value out of the technology. But my brain wasn't quite connecting the dots of what was happening. So I wanted to lean into that curiosity. So I moved on from that company to dive into more technical roles, less on the business side. And that gave me an advantage because I already understood the business side, right? And so getting into the nitty gritty of the technology, learning what was so great about the transition is so I learned about hardware. And when I left GCS Technologies, AWS was starting to come up and do their thing, which is cloud infrastructure. And so the trajectory of technology was already in such a transformative state. It was perfect timing for me. Like when I tell you that I was so blessed to be going from a legacy world and then adopting this new technology and being part of that transition. So I was part of that transition as a student, became AWS certified in 2016, worked with different cloud companies. And then I had a deep interest in software. So now I was getting closer to where my dad was. I'm like, oh, I gotta start partnering with my dad again. So I start calling him. He's always been my greatest teacher. My dad knows everything about everything. And he started mentoring me, telling me what books to read, and I was a self-taught programmer. So I learned how to build some software, learned how to build websites. That's kind of where I started. And then I got interested into more of the like no code, low code tools It's like WordPress, Wix, Weebly. These were a lot of the players and became certified in a lot of them. And that's how I started BeePrint because I had enough skills to then help small businesses and entrepreneurs that needed to build technology, but maybe didn't have large budgets, right? They were either solopreneurs or maybe this was their side hustle. So they weren't working with lots of capital, nor did they have investors, but maybe they had a few $100s or a few $1,000s to build cool stuff. And that's literally what have helped me kind of venture out into building BeePrint.
Okay. So I'm noticing a trend of you're just very curious. You're very curious and you're not afraid to like jump ship and see what this is about or see what that is about. And it's been allowed you to like climb the corporate ladder per se. How was that like being a double minority as far as being a woman and then being black, a black woman in tech? What was your experiences with that?
Oh man. So my experience was actually very interesting. I'll add another layer, triple minority, because I also identify LGBT. So I always call myself a triple minority for that reason. Um, Initially, because I was in Austin, my experience is kind of how I was sharing earlier. I always felt alone in the sense that there was no one that looked like me in those rooms. But what it did force me to do was build community in spaces where I am the only, right? And what I did with that is said to myself, there's something that I can learn. For example, at GCS Technologies, the kind of first tech company I worked for, I knew that there was something I could learn from the CEOs that founded that company. Um, and so I just put myself in sponge mode. Like, I'm just going to learn from them because I knew my end goal was to take what I learned and to build something for my people. Right. So I'm like, all right, if I have a seat at this table, right, let me learn enough so I can go into my own rooms and build my own tables with my people. So even though I was in isolation, whether it was always being the only woman, always being the only minority, um, I leaned into that. I didn't allow it to intimidate me. It also allowed me to learn how to work really well with men in the sense that technology is dominated by white males, right? And so you can either crumble in those rooms or you can be challenged and refined and sharpened in those rooms. And I chose to be challenged and sharpened. I said, you know what? The things that are working for them, why can't they work for me just because I'm a Black woman? And so I use that as education. I use that as a time and take my notepad everywhere I went. And I'm taking notes and I'm learning from them. And I'm also learning from them in the sense of the things that maybe they didn't always get right too, right? Whether it was lack of lack of diversity within their organizations, right? So even though I do focus more on BIPOC, um, I've intentionally ensured that I'm always cultivating a culture of diversity, meaning you'll probably never see me create something that's just all Black or for all Black. Because I also think that goes against the greater vision, which was Dr. King's vision, right? There should be a space for all of us. We should all be able to dream. And I don't think anything that I produce is limited to just my own people. I think part of being the example is building for the greater good in not a sector of people or humanity. But I always did keep my people in mind in the sense that I'm going to make sure we have access
Right, right.
because we've been the underserved, we've been the underprivileged. Um, and so, yeah, I think I took my experience more than anything and leaned into it in curiosity and more of a learning space, more so than feeling the weight of, man, there's nobody else that looks like me. And so once I was able to grow more into my career and get into more management roles, I knew the next task that I had was not just to share my knowledge, it was to bring people that look like me into those spaces. And so that was the turning point, being able to change the rooms where I was the only, and now I see some of us because I was able to open those doors. And then seeing some of those people now create their own tables and have their own businesses and their own entrepreneurial journeys. For me, it's just that's the reward. That's the reward.
And so, like, speaking of, like you said, tech is dominated primarily white male. How are you able to come off as a Black woman confident and diligent in knowing what you're talking about without being perceived a certain kind of a way?
So that's a good question. I think because I was so young in my groom, like I was somewhat groomed, right, by some of these men in the sense that I was coming in with very little experience. And so I somewhat tried to mirror what I was learning, but then also the way I built my confidence was truly diving into learning, right? And so I think the more you know about a particular subject, the increase in confidence that you'll feel, right? And so whenever I found myself either intimidated about a particular subject or topic, I knew that was a homework assignment. All right, when I go home tonight, you need to learn about networking so you understand when they're talking about these area networks and these wide area networks, you don't sound like a novice in the room. You actually sound like you know what you're talking about. And what that forced me to do was actually go back into creativity mode. How do I take these highly technical concepts and simplify them in ways that I can understand? So I'll give you a quick example. When I was struggling to understand load balancing, after doing a deep dive on it, taking a couple of courses on YouTube, I then mapped out like a drawing of what I could see in my mind, and I resonated it to something practical that we always experience as adults. We're driving all the time, right? And so I saw the connection between when you're driving on a highway and there's traffic, cars are moving at a slower rate. And so in networking world, those are just packets. We have these packets of data and packets of information that are being transferred. So load balancing is essentially if we could automatically add a new lane to a highway, Highway 45, right? I-45, that's essentially what's happening in the cloud. And so learning how to create these like mini stories of like, but what's really happening and mapping it back to real life allowed me to understand and break down very highly technical concepts, like tapping into inner child. How can I explain this to a kid? How could I, if I was trying to teach a child networking and what that means or load balancing, what that means, how could I draw it out for them in the most simplest sketch and they could get it and then actually teach someone else? And so I think staying in that student mindset, I'm so grateful I've never been intimidated as a student. I think I'm going to be a lifelong learner, and I hope I will be, um, because learning is the key. And also being comfortable with what you still need to learn. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in like knowing what you know and knowing what you don't, right? And making a priority to also know what's worth going to learn and maybe what you don't need to learn. So I made sure to also ensure that like my learning queue, whether you call it a task queue or whatever the case might be, I was always scrubbing that as well and making sure that I didn't learn things frivolously that maybe didn't add value to myself or other people as well. And so I think staying in a student mindset really allowed me to take those experiences, learn from them, and not be so intimidated, to be okay with being a student and being confident in that. I think people appreciate that too. Like, okay, she's not coming in here like she knows everything. She's coming in here knowing that she knows these set of things and she's open to discovering and researching the things that she doesn't.
I like what you just said because I just learned that term yesterday. I don't know if it's 401 learning or 411 learning, but pretty much one-on-one learning is like you hear something and then you write it down. Whereas 401 or 411 is what you said. You hear something and whatever thoughts you have of what you just heard, you write that down and then you're able to learn it at a more deeper level.
Exactly.
So that's pretty cool. I want to talk about like your early days of the B print. So after you get this first contract, what did those early days look like for you? Was it huge success after that, or yeah, what was that?
But it was a slow journey. It was a slow stroll. That's what I'll say. It was a slow stroll. So we got the first yes. Those first few projects with BeePrint were focused more on staff augmentation. And for anyone who's not familiar with that, that basically means we would work and partner with other established companies to fill in their resource gaps. So one company may need two software engineers that are junior. Another company might need three mid-level or senior software engineers. One company may just need some quality testers, some software testers. And so I learned to build a pool of talent to match the needs of the resources that some of these small companies were looking for. And then eventually I got more interested in, hey, I want to build things end to end. I don't want us to just be a resource supplement provider. I also want us to be able to, if an entrepreneur or a solopreneur or business owner came to us with a vision, could we execute from beginning to end that entire vision? And so one of the first projects that we closed to do that was for a nonprofit that I actually helped co-found in Austin, and that was building a platform for social justice. And so I was able to bring my team from Haiti in. You know, they were able to come in with requirements, and at this time, I expanded BeePrint to have a co-founder. So originally, when I first started BeePrint, it was just me and a young woman named Michelle. Her name is Michelle Peters. We met when we were still both in the workforce. We worked for a white male dominated company. We saw all the toxicity that happens in that world, and that was our bonding moment. We bonded on that. She's also a minority woman. She's half Korean, half Caucasian, and so it's so organic how we even fell back into each other's lives. I left the company that we were working for together. I don't even want to say their name, but I left that company to go and do training in Haiti. So I'd already been visiting Haiti, I already kind of formulated a team. But I said to myself, if we want to level up, let me go and get them trained on how to work with US teams. And so I left the company, her and I stayed in touch, did the training. I got the team certified in Scrum. So they all became certified Scrum Masters, which gave them more agile development frameworks and just they would be acclimated to working with US teams and kind of our norm and some of our standards for engineering practices. And this was the year of George Floyd. All right. So this is what, 20, is this 2018? Yeah. Maybe 2020. I thought it was 2018. Maybe, you know what? You're right. 2020. That's fine. 2020. Yeah. I moved to Atlanta in 2018. George Floyd in 2020. So I was gone from that company that her and I worked at for 2 years. We hadn't really stayed in touch. So I'm at a protest for George Floyd. She calls me, and it was a peaceful protest until it wasn't. We were shot at. Now, literally, while she's calling me, trying to protect a friend of mine because I invited him to the protest, I felt bad that we were in the middle of a shootout at this point. So I'm trying to protect him. I see her call. I'm like, I'm gonna have to call you back. You know, there's a lot of craziness going on. The woman next to me got hit. Oh, all right. So she got hit in her stomach. Again, COVID's still happening, so we couldn't even all go into the hospital and support her. But anyway, so I called my friend Michelle back. And she's like, "Hey, are you okay? Like, man, like I was calling just to check on you. I wasn't expecting you to be in the middle of that catastrophe." And so I let her know, yeah, everything's fine. The woman's in the hospital. You know, she ended up making it. So I think she's gonna be okay. Yes, a little spooking up, but how are you? What was your reason for calling? The wild thing is this woman called me and said, I see what's happening in the world, and I want to offer you my half white privilege to support whatever you have going on right now. And I was taken back by that because I was not expecting that call. I was just like, whoa, okay. And I had to think about it. Like, what do I need right now? I'm always the person that's ready to serve and be there for others. It's not often that I even have to think about how to ask someone what I might need. And mind you, she has a tech background as well, but she's a UX researcher and designer. And that was a major gap I had. I had engineers, but I had no one who could design what the interfaces would look like, who would get in the minds of the users and understand what do they need. So I said, well, hey, I have this company that I started by myself. I have some engineers in Haiti. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I know my goal is to like ensure that we can build apps and products for people that look like us. And she said, I'd be happy to go on this journey with you. It was effortless. So she became co-founder. We changed the company from an LLC. I was just an LLC because I was a solopreneur. And at that point, BeePrint became an incorporation, and we were playing on a different level. And our contracts went from those $5,000, $10,000 apps to the six-figure apps, and things changed. And the tenacity that she brought, the UX lens that she brought, allowed us to become no longer a software development company, but a real innovation company. Because innovation starts with the problem, and UX researchers start there. They think about what are the pain points of the people that we're building for. And so that allowed BeePrint to go from the staff augmentation kind of engineering resource company to a full stack design and development company, which changed the game for us. That's when the projects increased. That's when we got bigger contracts. And naturally, which is my favorite part of the story, Michelle and I were able to birth something from BeePrint. So BeePrint also has a baby now because of our experience. And the way that happened is since we were building custom software, we talked to entrepreneurs of all walks of life, and they all kind of had some similar things that they needed. And so we found ourselves at times, being able to meet them where they were in terms of cost. But there were a lot of entrepreneurs that were like, we can't afford $50,000. We can't afford $30,000. Rightfully so, right? I get it. This is your side hustle. You may not have that in the bank, or you may not be able to get credit or a loan for that. And who really wants to take that sort of risk with a dream or an idea, right? Typically, you want to be conservative in those spaces. So I said to Michelle, man, we have to find a way to accelerate what we're doing, right? And make it more accessible to the everyday entrepreneur. And so Bricklow came about. I had already worked with a lot of startups that were starting to do this whole concept of white label, right? How do you build something one time and make it brandable for either other, industries, make it brandable for other companies, et cetera. And so I said, what if we looked at the common denominators of all these software tools that we're building, package them into a bundle, and allow people to DIY, turn on what you need. Okay, are you offering memberships? Okay, then how much do you want to charge? So we started to look at the commonalities, and a lot of entrepreneurs have similar goals. They need a concept of someone signing up. They need the concept of someone being able to transact. They need the concept of someone being able to maybe customize a profile with a picture or avatar, right? If they need the concept of being able to deliver something, whether it's images, video, text, GIF, etc. So we realized, why are we building the same kind of application over and over again for all these different people when maybe there's a different approach? Maybe we build something that's more of a toolbox and it's ready to go out of the box, and all the entrepreneur has to do is put their brand on it, put their content in it, and they're ready to launch. And so that's the birth of Bricklow. That's how Bricklow came about. And we started that in 2021. And we got an angel investor in 2022, which was a blessing. So someone believed in our dream enough to help fund it. And we met an amazing group of people along the way, people that now work with us, people that have brought in their expertise and said, hey, I actually don't need to be paid. I just want equity because I believe in what you're doing. So I'm willing to come in here and serve as your CFO or your CTO or whatever role that you need fractionally because I believe in the vision. I believe in what you're trying to do. And so as of now, we're a very small team on the Bricklow side, but our goal is to go public this year with our product. It's a platform that serves entrepreneurs, whether they're life coaches, whether they're fitness trainers. It's anyone that feels like they have knowledge or wisdom or they're a guru in some particular expert or facet of life, and they want to spread that knowledge to other people for their betterment. And when I think about that, even saying it out loud, it just takes me back to my inner child. It's always what I've valued. That's been my whole story, is how do you take what you've learned and the gifts and the skills that you have and pay it forward, and build something beyond just yourself. And I feel like Bricklow has given us an opportunity to do that because now the everyday entrepreneur, if they can afford $30 a month, $40 a month, they can have their own application branded for themselves with their own content, able to scale and make money and monetize and hopefully become bigger than maybe a side hustle, right? I mean, I love the stories of seeing entrepreneurs where they thought this small thing, whether it was a course or a fitness program, and now they're quitting their job because this is their full time. They're able to generate enough revenue to sustain the lifestyle that they want while making impact. And for me as an entrepreneur, there's no greater feeling than that. That is the mission, paying it forward and providing people with access to opportunities that allow them to build the lives that they want.
So I want to talk about Bricklow just a little bit so I can understand what it really is. So it's for entrepreneurs that offer coaching programs or mentorships. Wait, so what is it that they're getting when they subscribe to Bricklow?
When they subscribe to Bricklow, they get access to our no code, no design platform builder. They don't have to have a single tech skill. My oldest customer is 80 years old, and she was able to launch her continuing education program using Bricklow. She is a massage therapist, and she teaches continuing education to people in the industry so that they can continue their certificates and things of that nature. She came to us and was like, I'm getting old, I'm tired. I don't want to have to keep doing this in person. And the day I saw her use Brickle with ease, I knew I was onto something. She was able to click, publish, add her images, add her video, add her content, and had her course ready to go. That emulated the video courses that she used to have to spend hours to record, classroom time, coordination. So it allows people to also scale beyond in person experiences. If you're someone that offers an in person experience, but you want to have a global impact, Bricklow is the type of platform that can allow you to easily scale and do that.
And what are the how do you deal with like the competitors? Like what is your angle differentiating Brickwell from what else is out there?
Staying curious about what my users need. And so, again, I'm so grateful to have Michelle on the team because that empathy and always thinking about your user allows you to stay ahead of. We don't focus so much on, there's a lot of AI buzz, right? Not saying that we're not incorporating AI, but what we're not trying to do is be like everyone else. We don't want to eliminate the humanity from these experiences. And I see AI doing some of that. Like AI is getting to the point where some of us, we don't know when we're seeing real content or not, right? And I also see a shift in people being hungry for what's real. So one of the things that we want to do is almost eliminate false content by allowing Brickload to be kind of a gatekeeper for that. We'll refine your content, but we're not suggesting you use completely artificial content. We actually want to hear your voice. We think your voice matters. And so I think that is going to give us a unique edge is staying close to humanity and not getting so caught up in the AI bugs. To me, AI should help. And this is why I don't even like the word AI, right? Because when you look at what it means, it's artificial intelligence. It already doesn't, like, none of us want to consume anything artificial, right? Like, none of us do. I wish they branded it accelerated innovation. But that's really what it should be, right? AI should just be a tool that allows you to accelerate your innovation and get your thoughts out, create prototypes, be able to get things out quickly. So for us, the angle that we're taking is how do we preserve the humanity, the emotion, the integrity of just being human? And that's going to be the position I think that differentiates us from some of these other products and our competitors.
And so um as far as Brickwell goes, is it private right now? You only have it to a few private users and then you're gonna go out public later?
Goal is to go public. So we have a few private beta users that we've been learning from that are helping us validate what we've got going on. Um, this year, we plan to go completely out. We want the public to be able to come and consume. We want the public to also come and help us learn because that's going to allow us to capture a lot more data and educate us on what we got right and where we need to make some improvements and enhancements. So
Okay. And you said before you met your co-founder, you were like a solopreneur. Were you full-time solopreneur or you were still balancing your 9 to 5?
always balanced. So one of the things I learned early, and I'm grateful for this, is I always balanced the solopreneur journey with a 9 to 5. And the reason that being is I learned early on, let your 9 to 5 be your bank. So that allowed me to also start business without debt. I didn't come into this with having to, get a $50,000 loan and figure out how to pay that off and things of that nature. I literally came in with a blank sheet and allowed my 9 to 5 pour into the investment of the business and build a business. So even with Brickla, I was able to take profit from BeePrint and pour that right into Brickla to start that.
And can you talk about like the workload that goes into having a 9 to 5 and trying to build something? Because a lot of the times people will say that they just don't have the time to, if they have a vision, they got a dream, they don't have the time to be able to build it, right? Can you talk about how you balance your workload and what type of workload someone can expect if they're in a 9 to 5 right now and they want to start something of their own?
I think we make time for what's important to us. We at least have 16 hours. If you sleep 8 hours, which is the recommended time, we at least have 16 hours in a day. If I work 8 of those, what am I doing with those other 8 hours? Watching TV, doing frivolous
Right.
things, right? I think people don't take inventory of their time well, and there's a lot of this. That's why I put a limit on either my social media apps. I put 1 hour. kick me out. If I'm in here for more than an hour, kick me out of this thing, right? Because it's so easy to get lost. And now you're living life watching other people live and complaining that you don't have enough time to build your vision. So I either challenge, is that vision really that important to you, right? Or are you operating out of fear? There's too much fear to actually lean into trying it. So it's easier to escape and make yourself busy so that you're not actually using your time towards your goal and vision.
Talking about fear, do you think some people are like afraid of success? That's why or do you believe in that concept? Their fear to succeed?
I think they're more fearful of the journey to get to success.
Mm,
I don't even know if it's the fear of success. I think most of us, I think we desire success, right? I think it's more the fear of the journey because through that journey will come failure.
right.
And I don't normally use the word failure. I try to say lessons learned, but let's just be blunt about it, right? Will come some else. And if you don't have a tenacity for that, and even like a excitement for it, again, is going back to that inner child. Most children, you put them on a field and they're learning flag football. Let's say that season they had 3 wins, 6 losses. They're probably not beating themselves up over it. They're thinking about they had fun. Mom, Dad, did you see, I got my touchdown? Like they're not taking inventory on all the bad. They're thinking about the experience and the joy that they had while they were on that field or doing whatever it is that brought them joy, right? And so I don't think people have a fear of, and this is just my opinion, a fear of success. I think it's the fear of the journey and the ambiguity and the unknown.
Yeah. I think that's very true. One of the things I like to stick on is like there's a Bible scripture and it talks about like the trials, they refine you. And a lot of entrepreneurs, successful ones such as yourself, they talk about how you literally have to go through that fire to get to the other side. And and yeah, I agree with you 100%.
How is a diamond made?
Right.
Pressure. It starts off as just a little stone pebble, something that's worthless almost, right? But that pressure as the value, it refines it to be something of value. And now it's diamonds are one of the most precious elements in the world in terms of quality, in terms of value. And it's made by pressure. So to me, I think, if we can lean into that and lean into you know what, I want to lean into this. Like, I look forward to the pressure. I look forward to being refined. I look forward to when I'm challenged, right? I'm not in my comfort zone. I look forward to when people bring me opportunities to step out of what feels normal or comfortable to me, because I know that there will be some refinement and some pressure. I'm like, bring it on. Let's go. I don't know who I'm going to be on the other side, but I'm ready to see who that person is.
And so when did you finally decide to go full time? What was that like?
I decided, so actually it was kind of not really forced on me, but while I was in Atlanta, the last kind of project that I worked on, which was with a startup, we ended up building a platform that was acquired by Lyft later. So that was my first acquisition that I got to be a part of. I wasn't a stakeholder in the sense that I was an employee for the company that got acquired, right? But it taught me a lot. I worked very closely with the CEO there. And when that happened, we had a choice. You could either go and work with Lyft or you could take the severance. I chose to take the money. It was a decent package. And I said, you know what? I want to move to San Francisco. I want to explore my own path. Um, and so I took the severance, and that was kind of a booster to start going really deeper into the business side and not feeling pressure of like having that stability.
So you walked into it confident, like you were ready to take it on.
I was ready to take it on and I was ready for the adversity that would come. I think I've always been naturally prepared. One of the early lessons I learned in my career um, was having a tolerance for ambiguity. And I think that tolerance for having a tolerance for ambiguity, being comfortable with the unknown, being comfortable with not having all the facts, not having all the details, but walking in knowing that you don't have any control over anything except for yourself and how you react to a situation. And I think that really helped me in spaces where maybe my confidence had to come from an intrinsic place, meaning my confidence may have not been my resume, right? It may have not been accolades. It may have not been any success stories yet, but it came from an intrinsic place of knowing I have control over myself. And whatever I learn from this, it's up to me to take it forward and do something with it. And so I think that was really what helped me just maintain a level of, I would say, fearlessness more than anything. Not even confidence, it's more fearlessness.
Yeah, being bold. Yeah.
Being okay with any outcome. Because I also think confidence means you know you'll win. I think fearlessness is I don't actually know,
Yep.
but I'm willing to go through it and find out.
So what were some of those L's that you took that I want to know, like an L that you took where it's like, oh, I don't know about this one. Like we might have to think about something else, you know?
I took a few L's and I'm totally okay with sharing some of those L's. Some of those L's were taking on projects maybe I wasn't ready for. So I told you I had this spirit of fearlessness, which there's some cons to that. Is there were times when I was so hungry to keep the team in a state of prosperity. There was no project that came to me where I was like, oh, do we actually have the skills to build this? Right. And so I had a few projects where I did have to bring in some emergency support, which humbled me quite a bit. Whether it was, more refined consultants or the contractors and things of that nature. And it allowed me to learn quickly to ensure that I'm matching my talent to the job, right? And that if for some reason there's a gap, I take that inventory and say, hey, team, there's a gap. Let's go and learn this thing. So it also allowed us to have a backlog of what technologies and tech stacks do we need to learn to ensure that when we get those projects that might be a little bit more complex or might have a little bit more layers of technical specificity, we actually could meet those demands and requirements with our skills.
So where is where's Deep right now? Like what's the status of it now compared to how you started?
BeePrint now, I'm very excited to actually share. We just closed our first project for the Department of Education. And so we went from, again, I don't know if I shared this, my first BeePrint client or project before we did staff augmentation was a small HVAC company in Pflugerville, Texas, which is right outside Boston. And my approach at that time, being that I didn't have any systems, I didn't have a team, is I would go online, look at some mom and pop businesses and look at their web presence. Take a look at their website. Do they have a good website? Is it clean? Um, is it visible? Is it ADA compliant? Does it have a good brand? And I found this company called Available Air. Their website was terrible. It was from the 90s. I mean, it was so janky, clunky. But I saw they had such great Google reviews. And so I was like, man, the essence of their business should have a better justice digitally. Like I just felt like it was just an injustice how bad their site was. So I went on ahead and took a risk. Rebuilt their site, right? Completely. Rebuilt their brand. I went and visited them and said, I know you guys don't know me, but I think you have an remark. One of the things I learned is you go into these situations where it's a complete stranger, almost a cold call, where you're just walking in. You start with highlighting what the company is doing well. You wanna build a rapport where it's like you're kind of gassing them up in the areas that you see that they're doing well. Why? That makes them a little bit more open to hear what you have to say. I started with, man, you guys' reviews are amazing. Like it seems like you have a beautiful business. But one of the things I noticed is that your website looks a little outdated. It doesn't mirror the reviews and the amazing things that people are saying about y'all. I sold that website for $299 that day. Because again, I was just getting started. I didn't even know what a website should be priced at. But when I tell you it was the easiest sale ever, like they were just like, they love what I built. They're like, yeah. So that taught me how to just lean into when you see an opportunity or you see a vision, you just create it, right? To be closing projects now for the Department of Education, that's what we started. And now we're seeing six-figure contracts. For one, it's humbling. Like I would have never imagined to be here today. But I think it's also a reflection of what we truly value, which is elevating humanity. I've never been into the business for the sake of making money, popularity, like it was never about that. It was always seeing where there was a need and seeing how I could align that need to my talents, my gifts, my passions. Um, And so I share that story from the past because it's like, wow, that's what BeePrint came from. Our very first project was a small HVAC mom and pop company. And I sold the website for $299. And today we're selling apps upward of six figures, And so it's mind blowing. It's mind blowing. And the most humbling part is that I'm not doing it alone anymore. I have a team, and I actually don't build websites anymore. I have a team that we can assign, and they can grow, and they can build their own skills, and they're able to make a good living and and grow as professional.
I think that's really, really dope to hear that story, especially for someone who's like starting off. Oh, you're trying to find leads, like you're doing everything you can. You're taking a lot of no's, and then you just go out and you create your own opportunity just to get started. Um,
Niche.
yeah. So I commend you on that. That's pretty cool. For for somebody who's starting off, what are some skills that they need to acquire to be able to get into this journey of entrepreneurship? So far from your story, I'm hearing you're a learner, you're building relationships, and then you're a high agency. What else would you add to that list?
I would say some of it is probably personal in the sense of knowing yourself. I think some of the biggest skills actually in business and doing business, outside of like self awareness and being confident within who you are things like integrity, right? People really enjoy working with people that they can trust, that they don't have to worry about. So I think it's also ensuring that you're credible. One of my favorite books is by Don Miguel Ruiz, The Four Agreements. Are you familiar with it? Add it to your list. What's our four agreements? It's called that. It's by Don Miguel Ruiz. And he writes these kind of ancient short stories. They're very easy to read. Children can read them, but they're powerful. I read them over and over again. His four agreements are: be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personal. Always do your best. And don't make assumptions. Those four things, as like they don't seem that profound, right? It's like seems pretty basic, but those four things have been the core that have pushed me to here, right? Because if you don't take anything personal, then you're not walking around crippled when someone gives you constructive feedback. You're able to take that and say, you know what? And not saying that all feedback is right. You have to also know how to filter it. Some feedback is noise and people's personal opinions and things of that nature. But once you reach a certain point in your life, you can evaluate that feedback and learn how to do something with it. If I'm always a woman of my word, that adds to my confidence because I know if I say something, Drews, you want me to be here at this time? I'm over there, right? I'm a woman of my word. And if I can't, I'm also going to make sure I communicate. So when I think of being a person of your word, it's really communication, right? An effective communicator, an honest and transparent communicator. Always doing your best also adds to your confidence, right? Because your best can look different on different days. But if I know I was at a 50% today, but I did my best and go sleep at night, not living with the weight of regret. And I could start the next day reflecting, retrospecting, and seeing how to get it right. So when I think about the core of just those agreements, as simple as they really do give you a strong foundation to apply to your personal life, to your professional life, to your entrepreneurial journey, anything that it is that you're trying to do. Um, and I'll leave it with that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Definitely gonna read that.
Another book I would recommend would be The Alchemist for any entrepreneur that is trying to get from point A to point B. That one is by Paulo, and he writes about the dreamer's journey and how the journey is not linear. You don't have this just straight, perfect line. It looks chaos. It looks like a big scribble of spaghetti. But when you learn to embrace that journey and be prepared for it, knowing that I don't have any control over anything but myself, it's up to me to shift and adapt when I need to. So something's not working. Do I want to be insane and keep doing it? Or do I want to be flexible enough in who I am to say, let me take a step back, go backwards, and then go forward again? Those two books give some powerful frameworks. What I love is they're not business books. So again, I think it goes back to when you think about what an entrepreneur really needs to cultivate, it's self, it's spirit, it's connected, connection to God, it's connection to source, it's being grounded. To me, though, and that the entrepreneurs that I'm most drawn to, Jay Shetty, Robin Sharma, like they exude that. They emulate that.
Can you talk about your connection to God, how that's been helpful to you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm so grateful. I grew up knowing God at a very young age. I actually grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. I didn't stay in the faith. What I did appreciate, and maybe this is where my love for learning comes from. I did appreciate the structure of the religion, meaning I had a very strict 3 days a week. I was either in my Bible, I was taking notes, or I was in ministry. So here I was, 4 or 5, 6 years old, talking to strangers about God. Not only that, in the Jehovah's Witness faith, you also have to do things like this from a young age, meaning you are on stage having a conversation about God as a child in front of a room of adults and all kinds of people. And leaning into the things that you're learning, leaning into spirit, learning how to exercise faith as a young person. It's very, very, very powerful. It also gave me a sense of responsibility. If you have this knowledge, you're not supposed to keep it to yourself, right? And so I learned from a very young age, if I have something that's beneficial to others, it's up to me to take that and spread it and share it. And one of the things that Jehovah's Witness culture comes with is they kind of program you for this whole spread the good news. And again, even though I didn't stay in the faith, and I kind of found I got baptized actually a couple years ago at St. John's downtown, which is here in Houston. But it was a no-brainer because I already had that foundation. You know, I already knew the word from Genesis to Revelation. Most of my art, I'm happy to share if you guys are, if anyone's interested. I create like meditations and a lot of spiritual art. And a lot of it, I'm referencing scriptures and the things that I've learned through my own spiritual journey. Because God has shown up for me since I was a child through trauma, through abuse. I mean, I've been through a lot of things, CPS, through just a lot of situations in my life growing up as a Haitian American young woman. And without God, I don't know who I would have been. I could have been shaped by those experiences versus used for purpose, versus my experiences being used for greater good. Um, I learned that very, very, very early on. I feel like God is who helped me learn to dream. It was almost like you're in this reality, right? But no, come here with me. I'm gonna take you from that. And let's co-create. What do you want it to be? What do you want it to look like? And we can co-create that together. And he's been my greatest co-creator since.
I love that. I actually interviewed this guy, Bill Hendricks. I don't know if you heard. Have you heard of Bill Hendricks? Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. He was the first guest, and um,
I did a little research. I peeped you a little bit.
oh,
I did a little research.
yeah, I love Bill Hendricks just because he really talks about the giftedness that God gives every single individual, something that they do well and something that they do really good. And what I'm hearing from you is one of your giftedness could be that you're just a dreamer, because that's not something you're a dreamer, and then not only are you a dreamer, but you know how to like will it into existence. And it definitely aligns with what you're doing in software development because you're taking other people's dreams and you're willing that into existence. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the process. It really is starting with that concept, understanding the concept and breaking it down, and even going as deep as understanding the why. I've turned down projects before where maybe I didn't feel connected to the why, or the entrepreneur maybe wasn't at that state where they actually were connected with their why. They weren't sure what they were doing. It was like, oh, I think this app would be cool and we could make a lot of money off of it. And I'm like, come harder. Let's come with more intention. And so I think understanding the why is a big piece of it because it informs the what you build. It also informs how you build it. And so getting really, really deep into ideation has allowed me to think through all the possibilities, which I love. In my space of dreaming, I have no limitation. And when you think about the greatest invention, someone had to think completely outside the box. How many things do we interact with where 10 years ago, who would have thought that would be here, right? Or 50 years ago, did we think we'd all be here? And so when you think about that, even the Dr. King, right? Like we're living in his dream in this moment. And that to me is powerful as Black History Month approaches, right? Like, as we just had Dr. King's Day, right? Like, it's like we're living in history right now.
That's awesome. What have you learned about yourself in this journey? What is something that you had to learn and then unlearn? Habits that couldn't come with you along with this journey?
Ooh, man, that's a good question. Some of the things I had to learn. So I think I had to learn humility in the sense that because I was a dreamer, I got very attached to my dreams. And I felt like they were supposed to manifest the way I dreamed about them, right? And that's not always the case. Sometimes God's just helping you get a sketch going, but that doesn't mean it's going to be exactly that. So I had to learn humility very early on and not get too attached to what things look like and more focused on the impact and the value that I was looking to deliver. Um, the other thing I had to learn was I can kind of be a behind the scenes person. So this is you caught me at a good moment, Drew. It's like you've had conversations, so we already know like God has been pushing me to a space where it's like, okay, this behind the scenes comfort zone that you have, we're gonna crack that open, you know. And part of that came from a grief experience that I had a few years ago, losing my stepson. But he was a creative, and he taught me. He passed at 25. He taught me life is short, and it's a gift. So what are we gonna do with it while we're here, right? And so now I am learning to not take life for granted, to really show up every day with intention and to understand that this is truly a gift and God has given us a purpose and that's why we're here. And we should never take that for granted. Should never take that for granted.
What I'm hearing a little bit is similar to Joseph having a dream and then having to learn humility and things like that.
A lot of
That's
humility,
very true.
not humility, because my plan is my plan, but God has a plan. And oftentimes we are stewards of God's plan more than our own. And if you don't have that humility, you'll miss it. You'll miss it. You'll either miss the opportunity to work for an assignment that God has placed in your care and responsibility, or you'll miss what God is even trying to do for you and prepare you for.
So I got two more questions.
Yep.
Where do you see yourself in the future? What is your vision for the future? You said you got your plan. What is it?
My plan, I want to actually disconnect from technology a bit. So when I think of my 10, 20 years from now, and I've been writing about this, so this question is so timely. I want to get to a place where I'm going backwards and emulating the things that I feel like our ancestors did. So, for example, we live in a world where technology has taken over so much that we can't even trust the foods that we're eating, even when they're from the ground, right? Because there's all these advancements in pesticides and, you know, they're putting all this stuff. So for me, I would love to figure out a way to get back to working with the land and cultivating. One of the things I'm working on right now is a Ozempic competitor. I want to compete with Big Pharma. I know that's very dangerous, but I'm passionate about it because I have a lot of friends and family that are either on medication or they've been sick or I've lost a lot of people and there were preventable illnesses. I've been someone who's cured myself from diabetes, from allergies, from asthma. I mean, I was a very sickly child growing up, and to be on my way to 40 and take no medication and have zero illnesses, I think is a reflection of the things that I've learned and the things that I've created as far as my discipline system and the way I choose to live life. And so now for me, it's like, how do you allow that to be more accessible to the everyday person? Because this stuff is expensive. You know, taking care of your health and your body and your longevity comes with a cost. And a lot of times, it's not people that look like us that are benefiting from that, right? You see what happened to Dr. Sebi. We see what's happened to other leaders that have tried to play in this space. Oftentimes, they're threatened. I would love to figure out in my next 10 to 20-year plan to have land that's cultivating the things that my people need, from food, vegetables, you know, even agriculture in terms of treating the animals in a way that you ensure that the meat is very quality, because that's important too. Grass-fed meat, right? Cage-free. I imagine honeybee farms in my future, honestly. Like we're generating alkaline water, we're growing fruits and vegetables, and we're manufacturing vitamins and supplements to compete with big pharma. So if someone says they need to be on Ozempic, they could come to my site, type in Ozempic, and it's like, no, you need this. And that'd be a blend of MCT oil and moringa. And now that prescription you were taking, you're supplementing with God's medicine. I feel like everything I've learned and the skills that I've obtained over my career and just my own, because I'm my own walking testimony. I don't know if I told you, I used to be a little over 200 pounds. Um, I am my own walking testimony, and the things that I've done have worked for me. They've also worked for the people that I've helped. I've helped people with leukemia, people with diabetes, people reverse conditions that require them to be on medication and maybe need surgery. And today, they're living a holistic life. They're thriving. Um, I feel like my calling now is okay. Take the technology, all the things that you've learned, and build something that aligns with your purpose and mission, which is to help. I want people to live a life of longevity and wellness. I think that's the most important thing. And I think that allows them to also have the strength to go and pursue things like entrepreneurship. Like if your mind is not clear because you have a poor diet and your gut's not operating well and you have all these things, it hinders you from maybe living the life that you want. I think starting with that intrinsic mental and physical wellness unlocks everything else anyway. Your creativity, your anything else that you want to do in life, your ability to succeed. So I want to start with that. I want to start with what we put in our bodies and help produce those things to make them more accessible to my people.
Well, based on your track record, I believe it. So,
I appreciate that.
um,
I appreciate it.
final question: if someone were to follow you through your whole life, right, seeing everything that you've been through, every L, every lesson, every win, what value can they pull out of that?
Faith in God, unwavering faith, unwavering faith. And that's what cultivates the dream, right? I think dreaming starts with faith. Without faith, I can't even formulate a dream because I'm stuck in, but this is life and this is just how it is. But having faith in God that there's something greater, that there's the possibility for better and more. I think it comes down to that, faith in God and exercising resilience with that faith.
Okay, leave it at that. That was great.
Thank you. Thank you. God is great.
Yeah.
God is good.